Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What assessment has my right honourable friend made of the number of people who have come off the main unemployment benefits since May 2010?
Well, Mr. Speaker, if my honourable friend looks at the three main benefits, job seekers allowance, ESA and lone parenting support, actually since the general election there's been a reduction in the number of claiming those benefits to 300,000. That's a consequence of the measures we've taken to get people into work and also a consequence of welfare reform.
Byrne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the Secretary of State will tell the House whether he thinks the bedroom tax is proving a runaway success.
It is proving a success because what it's doing, is finally drawing a light onto the failure of the last government to sort out the mess that was in social housing, a housing benefit bill that doubled in 10 years, set to rise by another $5 billion. And after all, I never hear from him or anybody on the other side about their failure because they left so many people, 250,000, in overcrowded accommodation, a waiting list that had grown to 1.5 million. And when he gets up, perhaps he'd like to tell us, is he going to reverse this policy or is he not?
Speaker, if the Secretary of State thinks the bedroom tax has been a success, then he is living in a different planet. Back in 2011, the Pensions Minister said to the House that this bedroom tax would solve overcrowding. On the BBC this morning, we hear that there are houses lying empty from Teesside to Merseyside. They're not overcrowded, Mr. Speaker, they are empty. We have councils up and down the country saying arrears are up 300%. We've got military families saying they have been lied to and cheated. When is the Secretary of State going to realise this costs more than it saves and this government should be taxing mansions, not bedrooms?
Well, just let me tell him something on the empty homes. They left huge amounts of empty homes when they left. It was something like 710,000 empty homes now, 73,000 below the peak in 2008 under them. 259,000 long-term empty homes, down 20,000 since they left office. And the reality is this, the party opposite left a shambles, and what we've got now is people in overcrowded accommodation. Never once do they hear from the Labour Party about them. They are having to suffer while we subsidise to nearly £1 billion people to live in houses with spare rooms. Let him perhaps one day say, if he ever got into office, going to reverse this, why does he stop moaning about it?
Jesse Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for Disabled People for her productive meeting last week with representatives from the Royal National College for the Blind in Hereford. Does she share my view that the best way to achieve efficiencies in the residential training programme is to encourage disability employment advisors to make more referrals to this very successful scheme?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend. I do indeed believe that would be a good way forward, and what we've done after that meeting was ask them actually to put all of their ideas forward and how they feel they could really reach out to more disabled people and how they could help more people into work.
Keith Vaz.
Mr. Speaker, last year the parents of 47,009 children living abroad received child benefit totalling £55 million. What steps has the Secretary of State taken in order to fulfil the promise that he made on the 30th of May in order to fight every step of the way in order to resolve this issue?
As the right honourable gentleman knows, this is an existing problem, a problem that the European Union insists that family benefits are paid at the highest level, depending on which country they're in. So somebody obviously in the UK who's coming to find work here would still get their family benefit from, let's say, Poland paid to them, but if it was lower than family benefits over here, they get the top-up amount going back to their families. I believe this is iniquitous, but I'm not alone. I've had a series of discussions with others from Holland, Denmark, Germans, etc., and there's a genuine consensus now growing dramatically that this is wrong and we need to change this, and so we're engaging on that with a plan to change that process with the Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A high percentage of ESA claims have been won on appeal because the claimant produced evidence that hadn't previously been made available. What can the Department do to encourage all relevant documents to be provided from the outset to save unnecessary cost and emotional stress?
My honourable friend makes an important point, and what we do is we do ask claimants when we send out the SA 50 forms to contact GPs and consultants so we can get the right medical information back in to help our decision makers reach the right outcome. But I would encourage GPs and others to take more time to get these returns sent in quickly so that we've got the best information possible to make those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Pensions Minister knows that I've been in regular contact with the pension regulator regarding the Carrington Wire Pension Fund. He also knows that I'm grateful for his support in addressing concerns about the ability of some foreign-based multinational companies to renege on their pension responsibilities to UK pension holders. So can I ask the Minister to say what progress the government is making in addressing this important issue?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable gentleman and pay tribute to the assiduous work that he's doing on behalf of his constituents in this case. I hope that this afternoon he was able to have a telephone conversation with the pensions regulator to discuss his constituency case. But in general terms, the pensions regulator does have powers to act overseas, as in the 2007 sea containers case and the 2011 Great Lakes case. But I'm very happy to continue to work with him on this issue.
Stephen Phillips.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can my honourable friend tell the House what steps the Department is taking to support those who've worked for one company for most of their lives and whose pensions have now gone into the Pension Protection Fund?
I'm pleased to announce that we recognise that the cap on those who are early retired in the Pension Protection Fund was affecting people particularly adversely if they had long service. So we will be laying amendments to the Pensions Bill so that those who have long service of more than 20 years with a firm will get an enhanced level of protection.
Luciana Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The number of people accessing emergency food aid from Liverpool Central Food Bank in my constituency has jumped by 70% over the last year. The chief cause of this is delays in receiving their social security support. What assessment has the Secretary of State made of how many more people will be forced to turn to food banks and payday lenders by his government's proposal to extend the wait for job seekers' allowance?
Can I say to the honourable lady, first of all, that story that it's because of weights, an increase in weights, is not true. In fact, the weights has fallen. In fact, that's improved by 4% in 2009-10. And can I also quote from the Trussell Trust, the director of UK food banks, who said the real reason behind most of this is, and I quote, "The growth in volunteers and awareness about the fact you can get this help if you need it helps explain the growth in this year."
Garnier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister share with the House what steps she has taken to deliver a cross-government disability strategy?
Thank you. My honourable friend asks a timely question because tomorrow we will be publishing a detailed action plan, a cross-departmental plan on how to help disabled people in so many different areas, a plan that has been developed with disabled people, from employment to education, to transport, to social participation. This will be coming out tomorrow.
Karen Buck.
Speaker, in 2011, Lord Floyd told peers that, in theory, his housing benefit policy would cause rents to fall. It is a matter of market forces, and that it is irresponsible to suggest that thousands of people would be made homeless as a result. In fact, rents have soared. Most new claims for housing benefit are from working families, and there has been a 91% increase in homeless applications in London from people losing their private sector tenancies. How is that theory going?
Yes, quite. Mr. Speaker, the honourable lady refers to soaring rents, but I hope she would take the evidence of the Office for National Statistics. They published figures last week for rents in London, in the private rented sector, which showed an increase of 2.2% below the rate of inflation.
Mr. Speaker, my constituent on JSA, who is actively seeking work, was recently made to give up some of the volunteering he was doing. What good is an arbitrary 16-hour-a-week limit on volunteering by JSA recipients when what really matters is that they do whatever's best to increase their chances of getting a job?
Mr. Speaker, there is no 16-hour-a-week limit on voluntary work, so let me display that myth first. But the important thing is that the job seeker is actively seeking work, and advisors have some flexibility on that. But that volunteering should not get in the way of trying to find a job.
William Bain.
Speaker, the bedroom tax is causing councils enormous financial strain, along with hundreds of thousands of vulnerable people across the country. The Pensions Minister told me on the 11th of June that this government is not keeping monthly checks on how much DHP money councils are spending. What will happen to hundreds of thousands of vulnerable people when the money runs out?
You take it on.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad the honourable gentleman raises the issue of the support we give to local authorities through discretionary housing payments. We constantly hear that it's not enough, so he may have been startled to learn that in the year just ended, 2012-13, over 300 local authorities in England, Scotland and Wales sent us money back, totalling over £11 million because they couldn't spend it.
Graham Evans.
In
interest of time, I was just about to ask that question.
Well, that's a first. And not just from the honourable gentleman, but more generally. Mr Jim McGovern.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The most recent figures suggest that of the people who are on the Back to Work programme in Dundee, my city, 9% have managed to get back to work. Now, I admit that is an improvement on the farcical 1.4, which was the percentage last year, the lowest in the UK, I believe. But you don't have to be an expert in arithmetic to work out that means 90% of people on that programme have still not found work. Would the government admit that with the recent bedroom tax has been mentioned, welfare benefit cuts, just starving families in work, they're starving them full stop?
We've got it. Minister.
Well, buried away in that question, Mr Speaker, there's a real nugget. He, unlike his front bench, accept the work programme is improving. It is getting more people into work. I'm delighted for his support for it.
Crockart.
Mr Speaker, what assistance can my right honourable friend offer my constituent who, anxious not to be a burden on anyone, took a 0 hours contract? Although generally working significantly less than 16 hours, on the odd occasion that he works over 16 hours, his department suggests that he makes a new claim when cancelling the old one. How can this be right in the circumstances?
I recognise this is an issue. In fact, some 200,000 people employed on 0 hours contract, and that's about 1%, just less 1% of all the workers. The current benefit system does deal with claimants on 0 contracts, but what Universal Credit will be doing is meaning that they will not have to re-sign on with that. Personally, I think there should be far fewer 0 hour contracts, and we're trying to work with employers and biz to actually persuade those who have a genuine long-term job to get off the 0 hour contract and actually get a proper contract of work.
Lazarevic.
Pension Minister's answer a couple of minutes ago on discretionary housing payments was quite frankly absurd, because he knows full well that a bedroom tax was on operation in the last financial year. So back again to the question of the impact of local authorities. Local authorities throughout the country, including my own, are now finding arrears going up because people can't afford the bedroom taxes being imposed upon them. What does actually expect local authorities to do with this, because it's affecting their overall budgets as well?
Well, Mr Speaker, just to be clear, when we made reductions in housing benefit in 2012-13, we were told that the support wasn't enough. His local authority, Edinburgh, I see, returned to us £162,000 of help they couldn't spend. I can tell him we have increased the support to Edinburgh Council this year compared with last.
David Ruffley.
Mr Speaker, benefit tourism can be deterred if there is greater conditionality introduced into the UK benefits system. I wonder if the Secretary of State could tell us whether or not our European partners will allow us to do this.
Mr Speaker, I do believe they will. I think there is a genuine concern amongst a large number of countries within the European Union who are concerned that whilst they want people to travel to come to work, which we do, free movement, what we don't want is for people to pick and choose the benefit system they want to be in when they're out of work. And so the reality is, recent conversations discussed with Germans and with various others, we are all moving together with a proposal eventually to get the European Commission to work with us to change it.
Ailey Whiteford.
Speaker, distributional analysis of the government's spending review shows that the 20% of people on the lowest incomes, namely the pensioners, the disabled, the unemployed and those in low-paid work who depend most on DWP support, are paying a disproportionate price from the austerity cuts. Are ministers not ashamed that they're asking the poorest to pay the highest price?
Hear, hear.
Can I just say to the Honourable Lady that, in fact, it's this government which has protected pensioners beyond any other government. We introduced the triple lock. Their incomes have risen faster and further than for a long, long time in the past, particularly under that lot over there. And the reality is we are protecting pensioners far better than they ever were protected by any other government recently.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Paul Stewart was paralysed from the waist down and told he would never walk again after a snowboarding accident. Through sheer willpower and determination, he has defied the odds, and next month he's undertaking his Iron Spine Challenge of a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile cycle, a 26.2-mile walk and a cliff-face climb to raise money for spinal research. Does the Minister agree with me that Paul is a tremendous inspiration to others who suffer such life-changing disabilities?
I would indeed agree with my honourable friend, and when I first heard about Paul's story, I read it twice because I couldn't believe what he was in fact intending to do. He was paralysed from the waist down, now he's paralysed from the knees down and actually learned to walk with aids and adaptations. I know the Prime Minister has supported him and I will be there at the start. I think this is an excellent challenge indeed.
See you back.